Chiquita never had a global HR system. We had mainly 3 regional systems that didn't integrate with one another and served only local needs. So one of the things we were really looking for is to have a true global system of record for our HR data. Secondly, we were looking to make sure that we had consistent processes across all of our regions and that we could effectively manage compensation data, performance data in such a way that, again, we drove consistency as well as made it easier for us to manage the global workforce in a way that provided us with transparency and visibility that we didn't have before. Those were the real main drivers to selecting Workday. HR had a number of goals with the Workday implementation. First and foremost was the implementation of a global HR system so that we could answer the proverbial CEO question of how many people work for the company today. Beyond that, HR also had the goal of reducing HR headcount by automating processes that were highly manual in the past. Additionally, they also wanted to ensure consistency in how we managed our employees worldwide, consistency in compensation as well as in performance management. For Chiquita, being a very traditional IT organization, the move to a software as a service solution like Workday was actually a very large paradigm change. And it was driven for 2 reasons. One was a cost driver, where we were more interested in the on-demand type pay-as-you-go model rather than the upfront large capital investment that we would have to make for an on-premises system. And in the space of HR, it was very hard to tie back that capital investment to a very specific ROI number, meaning that year after year, an investment in an HR system fell to the bottom of the list. And therefore, there was very little chance that we were going to be able to roll out a global HR system that didn't have an on-demand software as a service flavor to it. Having said that, it was, again, a big paradigm change for the IT organization. But once we thought through the software as a services model, thought through how another provider was going to house our data, and then compared that to what we were doing with our own internal data centers and the outsourcing of those data centers and the systems that lived in the data center, we very quickly became more comfortable with having a third party running and maintaining the system infrastructure for HR. What became more complicated was the realization that the data was going to be housed in a system that Chiquita did not actually own. And we had a lot of discussions with the Workday folks to understand the level of security around the data that was going to be housed by Workday. And after several discussions, we got comfortable with the fact that Workday was probably doing a better job at securing the data than we would have done internally. So one of the processes that Chiquita didn't do very well was our performance management process, which was very heavily paper-based. It worked well within the direct manager and the manager's manager, but outside of that, nobody had any visibility into performance reviews. So one of the problems was if a person moved from one group to another group, their performance review didn't necessarily follow the individual, and therefore you couldn't get a historical perspective on the employee's performance. By having all of the performance review data in a single global system, it's very easy to make sure that that performance data is following the employee no matter where they go inside the company. A second example is in terms of our merit increases. Merit increases required several levels of approval, all paper-based. Very hard to sometimes see where the approval was getting stuck, or if, as an approving manager, I had some questions regarding the base data, where the data came from, or what the historical salary increases were for an employee. That would be something that an HR individual would have to go back and research and come back to me on usually after a number of days. Now with Workday, it's all in the system. Very easy to see that history, very easy to see the comparable market data, and therefore very easy to make the approval decision. At the same time, for employees whose merit increases are getting stuck somewhere, there's true accountability to see where is the approval in the process and who is the individual who has yet to act on it, making it a one phone call to resolve rather than multiple phone calls to resolve. One of the advantages to selecting Workday and software as a service is that now the IT team doesn't need to worry about installation, configuration, and ongoing management of the solution versus what they would have had to do if it was an on-premises solution. So the amount of effort expended in getting Workday up and running was very minimal from the IT perspective. On an ongoing perspective, that allowed us to redeploy those resources to more value-added business-facing initiatives and gave us more flexibility in ensuring that we didn't have to go back to the business and ask for more dollars in either resources or for infrastructure costs, allowing us again to make sure that we had better utilization of our business resources targeted against the right business initiatives. Integrations are never easy, whether you think about it from the perspective of on-premise or whether you think about it from the perspective of software as a service. One of the mistakes, if I can call it that we made during the Workday implementation was underestimating the amount of effort it would take for us to complete all of the integrations, both to our benefit providers as well as to our internal systems. And there was a lot of work that both the Workday teams and the Chiquita team had to do in order to make sure that we got the level of integration that we were looking for in both of those areas. I'd emphasize, though, it was probably less of an effort than we would have experienced had we have done it internally, because Workday had already established interfaces and integrations to several of our benefit providers, which is something that we would have had to do, start from scratch if we had to do this ourselves. HR has had an excellent experience with the update process. There seems to be excellent communication between the Workday teams and the Chiquita HR team in terms of what new features and functionality will be released in the upgrade and what they might need to look out for as the upgrade actually occurs in terms of what might break, what might cause issues as users log into the system. So to date, we have not had any major issues with any of the updates that we have taken, and I attribute that mainly to the communications that occurs amongst the team. An upgrade from the IT perspective is almost a non-event. Unlike what we would have to do with on-premise software, where we would have to install, configure, test, QA, and then schedule a move into production, we don't have to worry about any of that. Workday notifies us about the update window. Workday and our HR teams work together to understand what new features and functionality is coming, and then the update occurs. We have not had any technical issues with any update that we have taken so far. Usability of the system was critical for us. As we did not have an HR system before, neither our HR community nor our broader employee community was used to interacting with an HR system. Thanks to Workday's ease of use and intuitiveness, our HR community believes this is leaps and bounds above what we've had in place in the past. Our employees, as they've started interacting with the system, are very enthusiastically embracing the system and looking forward to the new features and functionalities that we'll be rolling out throughout the rest of this year. So overall, it's been a tremendous success. One of the ways I've measured the success of the rollout as well as the ease of use is how many calls are being driven to my help desk as a result of having deployed Workday. And I'm happy to say that we've had very few calls into the help desk in regards to any Workday technical issues or functionality issues. which is quite remarkable for a new breed of software introduced to the broader employee base.